Maybe. But it says a ball goes in a funnel and then is shot out with the disc. Or like by using the cylinder. But after all, Lenina was protesting, it's only been about 4 months since I've been having Henry. Only 4 months. I like that. And what's more, Fanny went on, pointing an accusing finger, there's been nobody else except Henry in all that time. Has there? Lenina blushed scarlet. But her eyes, the tone of her voice, remained defiant. No, there hasn't been anyone else, she answered almost truculently. I feel like I'm not saying that right. Aggressively self-assertive.
Truculently.
Nailed it. Okay. No, there hasn't been anyone else, she answered almost truculently. And I jolly well don't see why there should be. Oh, and she jolly well doesn't see why there should be, Fanny repeated, as though to an invisible listener, behind Lenina's left shoulder. Then, with a sudden change of tone, but seriously, she said, I really do think you ought to be careful. It's such horribly bad form to go on and on like this with one man. At 40 or 35, it wouldn't be bad. But at your age, Lenina, no, it really won't do. And you know how strongly the DHC objects to anything intense or long drawn. 4 months of Henry Foster without having another man. Why, he'd be furious if he knew. Shut the fuck up, Fanny. You got a stupid name. Your name's Fanny in the year 632 AF. You shouldn't be talking to anybody. They're all sterile, and her name means vagina or butt. Depending on your perspective. Both are very funny. Well, you know what I don't get about the word fanny? Is that it is a British term for vagina, and also an American or whatever, I don't know where fanny is a butt, except North America, but Fanny was like a legit name in like the 19th century. Like little girls were just named Fanny, and then like did it already mean vagina or butt? And like people just named their girls Fanny anyways? Or like how did Fanny become a body part if it was a name? Like lots of little girls were named Fanny. I don't understand where the name starts and where the other meanings begin, you know? It's kind of like poor Dick, you know? Did we start calling it a dick because like a bunch of dudes named Richard slash Dick like they became a penis or something? I don't know. How could we mix these things up? Is a dick or is dick, you know? Estefani. What? Free one. It originates I can't. Estefani. That's interesting. Stephanie is a derivative of Fanny. Wow. Holy shit. So, yeah. I think we should start calling it Stephanie. Tiffany. Ooh. I got my Tiffany shaved today. Got my Stephanie shaved. My favorite part is that to like super Americans, or sorry, I don't know what you're called. Like 100% purebred Americans. That means you shaved your butt. I love it. Why are these Europeans shaving their butts? Okay. Anyways. Think of water under pressure in a pipe. They thought of it. "I'd pierce it once," said the controller. "What a jet." God, I keep thinking of songs I want to play, and I already forgot the first one, so now I gotta look one up. Fanny was used as slang as early as 1879. Maybe the name is intentional. I feel like the name's intentional in this book, but like I used to read like old children's stories from England, because I don't know if you guys know this, but my mom is British, and I don't just have a pretentious British affect for no reason. My mom is actually from England. It's real. I'm real. Okay? So I would read child's like fantasy novels from England that were written in like 1959. Like, and they were like my mom's like children books. Like, fuck, what were they called? I feel crazy 'cause nobody else has read the same children's books that I did as far as the British ones go. The Faraway Tree, or I don't know. Like, or the Enchanted Wood. I don't remember. What's the one about the tree? There is lots of dicks and fannies. Yeah, so I feel like in this book it's intentional, but like what I was wondering is like, I always wondered that when I was a kid, because I was raised by a British woman, and you know, like when you're a toddler at bath time, you know, you it's referred to as your fanny. And then imagine my confusion when I'm later reading a book from like 1959 and one of the main characters is named Fanny. And I'm like, excuse you. And nobody in the book says anything about it. Everybody else just is like, hey, Fanny, you know, like nobody says anything about it. It's just a normal person doing normal things. That's just her name. And I was so confused. I'm still confused to this day. It's just a name. Yeah, I get that. It's just, how do you not have questions, right? Anyways, thus concludes my TED Talk. It is the very same with Richard and Dick. And I'm glad you actually brought it up because, like, it's not the same. Like, I don't know why Fanny is so much funnier. But it's literally the same with, like, Richard and Dick. Like, when you're a kid and the first time you like, hear somebody called Dick, because, like, Dick's, like, a little more profane. Anyways, but also, like, like, Fanny means vagina. I don't know how much more explicit you can get. It's like the first time you hear, when you're like 10 years old or whatever, and the first time you hear somebody called Dick Trickle. And you're like, what the hell? You can just call people that? And nobody laughs. This is my friend, Cock Jones. It's like, who are your parents? Yeah. Why would you prefer Dick? And then all the Richards get pissed off if you don't call them Dick. They're like, I prefer Dick. Could you please only address me as Giant Dick the First? Okay. I named my son Ligma. It's just a name. Dude, that's gonna kill with the Zoomers. I can't. Oh god. I need more beer, right? Only 10 more pages to go. Ligma Ninja Jones. Ashley Hole. But I prefer Ash. Please call me Ash Hole. Okay, shut up, chat. Stop it. At your age, it's really unseemly. Think of water pressure. Or think of water under pressure in a pipe. Oh, I'm thinking of it. I pierce it once, said the controller. And what a jet. He pierced it 20 times. There were 20 piddling little fountains. My baby, my baby. Mother. The madness is infectious. Mother, monogamy, romance. High spurts the fountain. Fierce and foamy, the wild jet. The urge has but a single outlet. My love, my baby. No wonder these poor pre-moderns were mad and wicked and miserable. Their world didn't allow them to take things easily. Didn't allow them to be sane, virtuous, happy. What with mothers and lovers? What with the prohibitions they were not conditioned to obey? What with the temptations and the lonely remorses? What with all the diseases and the endless isolating pain? What with the uncertainties and the poverty? They were forced to feel strongly. And feeling strongly, and strongly, what was more, in solitude, in hopelessly individual isolation, how could they be stable? Of course, there's no need to give him up. Have somebody else from time to time. That's all. He has other girls, doesn't he? Lenina admitted it. Of course he does. Trust Henry Foster to be the perfect gentleman. Always correct. And then there's the director to think of. You know what a stickler, nodding. He patted me on the behind this afternoon, said Lenina. He patted me on the behind this afternoon, said Lenina. There, you see? Fanny was triumphant. That shows what he stands for. The strictest conventionality. Conventionality. Stability, said the controller. Stability. No civilization without social stability. No social stability without individual stability. His voice was a trumpet. Listening, they felt larger, warmer. The machine turns. Turns and must keep on turning. Forever. It is death if it stands still. 1,000 millions scrambled the crust of the earth. Scrabbled. 1,000 millions scrabbled the crust of the earth. The wheels began to turn. In 150 years, there were 2,000 millions. Stop all the wheels. In 150 weeks, there were once more only 1,000 millions. 1,000,000 men and women had starved to death. Wheels must turn steadily, but cannot turn unattended. There must be men to tend them, men as steady as the wheels upon their axles, sane men, obedient men, stable in contentment. Crying, my baby, my mother, my only love. Groaning, my sin, my terrible God. Screaming with pain, muttering with fever, bemoaning old age and poverty. How can they tend the wheels? And if they cannot tend the wheels, the corpses of 1,000 men and women would be hard to bury or burn. And after all, Fanny's tone was coaxing. It's not as though there were anything painful or disagreeable about having 1 or 2 men besides Henry. And seeing that you ought to be a little more promiscuous. Stability, insisted the controller. Stability. The primal and ultimate need. Stability. Hence all this. With a wave of his hand, he indicated the gardens, the huge building of the conditioning center, the naked children furtive in the undergrowth or running across the lawns. Lenina shook her head. Somehow, she mused, I hadn't been feeling very keen on promiscuity lately. There are times when one doesn't. Haven't you found that too, Fanny? Fanny nodded her sympathy and understanding. But one's got to make the effort, she said sententiously. One's got to play the game. After all, everyone belongs to everyone else. After all, everyone belongs to everyone else. Yes, everyone belongs to everyone else, Lenina repeated slowly, and sighing, was silent for a moment. Then, taking Fanny's hand, gave it a little squeeze. You're quite right, Fanny. As usual, I'll make the effort. Impulse arrested spills over. And the flood is feeling. The flood is passion. The flood is even madness. It depends on the force of the current, the height and strength of the barrier. The unchecked stream flows smoothly down its appointed channels into a calm well-being. The embryo is hungry, day in and day out. The blood surrogate pump unceasingly turns its 800 revolutions a minute. The decanted infant howls. At once a nurse appears with a bottle of external secretion. Feeling lurks in that interval of time between desire and its consummation. Shorten that interval. Break down all those old unnecessary barriers. Fortunate boys, said the controller. No pains have been spared to make your lives emotionally easy, to preserve you, so far as that is possible, from having emotions at all. Ford's in his flivver, murmured the DHC. All's well with the world. Lenina Crown, said Henry Foster, echoing the assistant predestinator's question as he zipped up his trousers. Oh, she's a splendid girl. Wonderfully pneumatic. I'm surprised you haven't had her. I can't think how it is I haven't, said the assistant predestinator. I certainly will, at the first opportunity. From his place on the opposite side of the changing room aisle, Bernard Marx overheard what they were saying and turned pale. And to tell the truth, said Lenina, I'm beginning to get just a tiny bit bored with nothing but Henry every day. She pulled on her left stocking. Do you know Bernard Marx? She asked, in a tone whose excessive casualness was evidently forced. Fanny looked startled. You don't mean to say... Why not? Bernard's an Alpha Plus. Besides, he asked me to go to one of those savage reservations with him. I've always wanted to see a savage reservation. But his reputation... What do I care about his reputation? They say he doesn't like obstacle golf. They say, mocked Lenina. And then he spends most of his time by himself, alone. There was horror in Fanny's voice. Well, he won't be alone when he's with me. And anyhow, why are people so beastly to him? I think he's rather sweet. She smiled to herself. How absurdly shy he had been. Frightened almost, as though she were a world controller and he a gamma-minus machine minder. Consider your own lives, said Mustafa Mond. Has any of you ever encountered an insurmountable obstacle? The question was answered by a negative silence. Has any of you been compelled to live through a long time interval between the consciousness of a desire and its fulfillment? Well, began one of the boys, and hesitated. Speak up, said the DHC. Don't keep his Ford ship waiting. Well, I once had to wait nearly 4 weeks before a girl I wanted would let me have her. And you felt strong emotion in consequence. Horrible. Horrible, precisely, said the controller. Our ancestors were so stupid and short-sighted that when the first reformers came along and offered to deliver them from those horrible emotions, they wouldn't have anything to do with them. When the first reformers came along, they wouldn't have anything to do with them. Talking about her as though she were a bit of meat. Bernard ground his teeth. Have her here, have her there, like mutton. Degrading her to so much mutton. She said she'd think it over. She said she'd give me an answer this week. Oh, Ford, 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 Ford. He would have liked to go up to them and hit them in the face. Hard. Again and again. Yes, I really do advise you to try her, Henry Foster was saying. Take ectogenesis. Fitzner and Kawaguchi had the whole technique worked out. Kawaguchi. Take ectogenesis. Fitzner and Kawaguchi had the whole technique worked out. But would the governments look at it? No. There was something called Christianity. Women were forced to go on being viviparous. He's so ugly, said Fanny. But I rather like his looks. And then so small, Fanny made a grimace. Smallness was so horribly and typically low caste. Well, I think that's rather sweet, said Lenina. One feels like one would like to pet him. You know, like a cat. Fanny was shocked. They say that somebody made a mistake when he was still in the bottle. Thought he was a gamma and put alcohol into his blood surrogate. That's why he's so stunted. What nonsense. Lenina was indignant. Sleep teaching was actually prohibited in England. There was something called liberalism. Parliament, if you know what that was, passed a law against it. The records survive. Speeches about the liberty of the subject. Liberty to be inefficient and miserable. Freedom to be a round peg in a square hole. But my dear chap, you're welcome. I assure you, you're welcome. Henry Foster patted the assistant predestinator on the shoulder. Everyone belongs to everyone else, after all. 100 repetitions, 3 nights a week, for 4 years, thought Bernard Marx, who was a specialist on Hypnopedia. 62,400 repetitions make one truth. Idiots. Yeah, I wasn't sure if I should stop and explain it now or after the chapter, but I guess since I'm like sitting here staring at you awkwardly, I'll just say it now. There's three narrations going on. One is the director of hatcheries and conditioning along with the controller, and they're giving a tour of the hatcheries and conditioning department building. They're giving a tour to a group of alpha students. So that's one narration. There's a second narration of a girl, a random girl. I don't think they've said anything else about her. Lenina. There's a random hot girl talking to her friends, and then there's a random hot guy talking to his friends. And the only person we know who their rank is I believe Bernard, who is I feel like calling him an incel would be an insult, because I don't think that's accurate. He's more like a volcel. And his thoughts, and then the conversation, and so it's like the guys in the locker room and the girls in the locker room, and then the students getting a tour of the building that they all work in. Perfect. I nailed this summary. So, and it's very hard for me to read this because I'm trying to like delineate which conversation is happening. So if you guys have any idea what's going on, then I'm doing okay. Thank you for listening. 62,400 repetitions make one truth. Idiots. Or the caste system. Constantly proposed. Constantly rejected. There was something called democracy. As though men were more... Oh, God. There was something called democracy. As though men were more than physico-chemically equal. Well, all I can say is that I'm going to accept his invitation. Bernard hated them. Hated them. But they were two. They were large. They were strong. Then the 9 Years' War began in AF 141. Not even if it were true about the alcohol in his blood surrogate. Phosgene, chloropicrin, ethyl iodoacetate, diphenyl help. Not even if it were true about the blood alcohol, or about the alcohol in his blood surrogate. Phosgene, chloropicrin, ethyl iodoacetate, diphenylcyanuracine, trichloromethyl, chloroformate, dichloroethyl sulfide, not to mention hydrocyanic acid. Which I simply don't believe, Lenina concluded. The noise of 14,000 airplanes advancing in open order. But in the Kurfürstendamm and the 8th arrondissement, the explosion of the anthrax bombs is hardly louder than the popping of a paper bag. Because I do want to see a Savage reservation. CH8, C6H2, NO2, 8 plus HG, CNO2 equals, well, what? An enormous hole in the ground, a pile of masonry, some bits of flesh and mucus, a boot with the foot still in it, or a foot with the boot still on it, flying through the air and landing, flop, in the middle of the geraniums, the scarlet ones. Such a splendid show that summer. You're hopeless, Lenina. I give you up. The Russian technique for infecting water supplies was particularly ingenious. Back turned to back, Fanny and Lenina continued their changing in silence. The 9 Years' War, the great economic collapse. There was a choice between world control and destruction, between stability and... Fanny Crown's a nice girl, too, said the assistant predestinator. Ooh, Fanny. In the nurseries, the elementary class consciousness lesson was over. The voices were adapting future demand to future industrial supply. I do love flying, they whispered. I do love flying. I do love having new clothes. I do love. Liberalism, of course, was dead of anthrax. But all the same, you couldn't do things by force. She's not so nearly pneumatic as Lenina. Oh, not nearly. But old clothes are beastly, continued the untiring whisper. We always throw away old clothes. Ending is better than mending. Ending is better than mending. Ending is better than mending. Government's an affair of sitting, not hitting. You rule with the brains and the buttocks, never with the fist. For example, there was the conscription of consumption. There, I'm ready, said Lenina, but Fanny remained speechless and averted. Let's make peace, Fanny darling. Every man, woman, and child compelled to consume so much a year. In the interests of industry. The sole result, ending is better than mending. The more stitches, the less riches. The more stitches. One of these days, said Fanny, with dismal emphasis, you'll get into trouble. Conscientious objection on an enormous scale. Anything not to consume. Back to nature. I do love flying. I do love flying. Back to culture. Yes, actually to culture. You can't consume much if you sit still and read books. Do I look all right? Lenina asked. Her jacket was made of bottle green acetate cloth with green viscose fur at the cuff and collar. 800 simple lifers were mowed down by machine guns at Golders Green. Ending is better than mending. Ending is better than mending. Green corduroy shorts and white viscose woolen stockings turned down below the knee. Then came the famous British Museum massacre. 2,000 culture fans gassed with dichloroethyl sulfide. A green and white jockey cap shaded Lenina's eyes. Her shoes were bright green and highly polished. In the end, Mustafa Mond said, the controllers realized that force was no good. The slower but infinitely surer methods of ectogenesis, neo-Pavlovian conditioning, and hypnopedia. And round her waist she wore a silver-mounted green Morocco surrogate cartridge belt. Bulging, for Lenina was not a free martin, with the regulation supply of contraceptives. The discoveries of Pfitzner and Kawaguchi were made at last use of. An intensive propaganda against viviparous reproduction. Perfect, cried Fanny enthusiastically. She could never resist Lenina's charm for long. And what a perfectly sweet Malthusian belt. Accompanied by a campaign against the past, by the closing of museums, the blowing up of historical monuments. Luckily, most of them had already been destroyed during the 9 Years' War. Malthusian belt, you've got it correct. It's the belt where they keep their cigarettes and birth control. It's like the Batman's gadget. What's it's like Batman's belt. But it's got like birth control in it. And cigarettes. And probably those little shot glasses that you get at the convenience store. Okay. Perfect, cried Fanny. And the discoveries of Pfitzner and Kawaguchi were at last made use of, accompanied by a campaign against the past, by the closing of museums, by the blowing up of historical monuments, although most of them had already been destroyed during the 9 Years' War, by the suppression of all books published before AF 150. I simply must get one like it, said Fanny. There were some things called the pyramids, for example. My old black patent bandolier, my old black patent bra, I think that's what a bandolier is. A man called Shakespeare. You've never heard of them, of course. An absolute disgrace, that bandolier of mine. Such are the advantages of a really scientific education. Oh, it's like a sash for ammo. A bandolier. Bandolier. Okay, thank you, chat. Okay, it was an absolute disgrace. Such are the advantages of a really scientific education. The more stitches, the less riches. The more stitches, the less riches. The introduction of our Ford's first T model. I've had it nearly 3 months. Chosen as the opening date of a new era. Ending is better than mending. Ending is better. There was a thing, as I've said before, called Christianity. Ending is better than mending. The ethics and philosophy of underconsumption. I love new clothes. I love new clothes. I love. So essential when there was underproduction. But in an age of machines and the fixation of nitrogen, positively a crime against society. Henry Foster gave it to me. All crosses had their tops cut and became T's. There was also a thing called God. It's a real Morocco surrogate. We have the world state now, and Ford's Day celebrations, and community sings, and solidarity services. Excuse me. Ford, how I hate them, Bernard Marx was thinking. Oh, I hate them. There was a thing called heaven, but all the same, they used to drink enormous quantities of alcohol. Like meat. Like so much meat. There was a thing called the soul, and a thing called immortality. Do ask Henry where he got it. But they used to take morphia and cocaine. And what makes it worse is she thinks of herself as meat. 2,000 pharmacologists and biochemists were subsidized in AF 178. He does look glum, said the assistant predestinator, pointing at Bernard Marx. 6 years later, it was being produced commercially. The perfect drug. Let's bait him. Euphoric, narcotic, pleasantly hallucinant. Glum, Marx, glum. The clap on the shoulder made him start, look up. It was that brute, Henry Foster. Man, what you need is a gram of soma. All the advantages of Christianity and alcohol. None of their defects. Ford, I should like to kill him. But all he did was to say, no thank you, and fend off the proffered tube of tablets. Take a holiday from reality whenever you like, and come back without so much as a headache or mythology. Come on, take it, insisted Henry Foster. Take it. Stability was practically assured. 1 cubic centimeter cures 10 gloomy sentiments, said the assistant predestinator, citing a piece of homely, hypnopedic wisdom. It only remained to conquer old age. Damn you, shouted Bernard Marx. Hoity-toity. Gonadal hormones, transfusion of young blood, magnesium salts. And do remember that a gram is better than a dam. They went out laughing. All the physiological stigmata of old age have been abolished. And along with them, of course. Don't forget to ask him about that Malthusian belt, said Fanny. Along with them, all the old man's mental peculiarities. Characters now remain constant throughout a whole lifetime. 2 rounds of obstacle golf to get through before dark. I must fly. Work, play. At 60, our powers and tastes are what they were at 17. Old men in the bad old days used to renounce, retire, take to religion, spend their time reading, thinking. Idiots, swine, Bernard Marx was saying to himself as he walked down the corridor to the lift. Now such is progress. The old men work. The old men copulate. The old men have no time, no leisure from pleasure. Not a moment to sit down and think. Or if ever, by some unlucky chance, such a crevice of time should yawn in the solid substance of their distractions, there is always Soma. Delicious Soma. 1/2 gram for a half holiday. 1 gram for a weekend. 2 grams for a trip to the gorgeous East. 3 for a dark eternity on the moon. Returning whence they find themselves, on the other side of the crevice, safe on the solid ground of daily labor and distraction. Scampering from feely to feely, from girl to pneumatic girl, from electromagnetic golf course to... Go away, little girl, shouted the DHC angrily. Go away, little boy. Can't you see that his Ford ship's busy? Go do your erotic play somewhere else. Suffer, little children, said the controller. Slowly, majestically, with a faint humming of machinery, the conveyors moved forward. 33 centimeters an hour. In the red darkness glinted innumerable rubies. Chapter 3. And next week we shall do Chapter 4, Part 1, apparently. I have to pee super bad, so that's all I can say.